This week's episode is titled When the Answer is Right in Front of You, but You Just Can't See It. I'm going to start off by sharing a conversation that I had with my son. It is a story that will illustrate a deeper business and life principle. And the story goes something like this. Years ago, before the modern days of every rental car that you purchase having CarPlay, which allows you to put your navigation map up on the screen inside of the rental vehicle, I used to go and rent cars and use my phone and the whatever navigation app of choice I have to navigate through a city that I'm driving through that I'm not familiar with. And to be able to do this safely, one of the things that I did is I purchased one of these little phone holders, a little bracket, a plastic device that attaches itself. It latches onto the air conditioning vent, the air conditioning vent. And so you ratchet it on there and it tightens on, clamps down real tight, and then I can put my phone in it, and lo and behold, right there at dashboard level, I am now able to see the map on my phone so that I can see when my next turn is coming, all the stuff. You are probably familiar with these devices. So I purchased one that always went in my backpack, and it was inside of the little brown cardboard box that it came in, because I figured there was little pieces to it and attachment pieces. So I always wanted it inside of this box, and I just kept it in my backpack. One day, my son asks me, "Can I borrow your phone holder? Mine broke." And I'm like, "Sure. No worries at all. Go ahead, and here it is." And I handed him the cardboard box out of my backpack, and he went off and used it for whatever purposes he was using the phone holder for. And a couple of days later, he returned it in the box, the same box that I gave him. And then I put it right back into my backpack. Well, I go on several more trips, and I realized that at one point I forgot what I did with the box and its little extra accessory pieces. I never used them, so it was no big deal. So whenever this was, I had finished up a rental car experience and I'm getting ready to return the car. I don't know where the box is, so I unratchet the little device and I stick it directly into the top pouch of my backpack, my tech bag, which is where it always goes anyway. But only this time, it's just the phone holder itself. It's this black plastic phone clamp just sitting in there, not inside its box. Anyway, I continued to use that little device for several more years as I traveled for all of my speaking gigs that I did. However, there was this one time that I used that little device in someone else's car. And when I brought it back into the house, I did not take it all the way back down to my office. I did not bring it and put it all the way back into my backpack. Instead, I specifically put it right in the cabinet just to the right of the refrigerator. This little plastic black phone holder right there on the bottom shelf of the cabinet. Now, I remember specifically doing that. And months and months and months had gone by. By this point, I no longer was taking that little phone holder with me to events. By this time, practically every car I rented had CarPlay. And so therefore, I had no real need for it. And I was on a business trip one time when my son texted me and says, "Hey, Dad, did you take your car mount holder thing with you on this trip?" I was like, "Nope, it's still there at the house." He goes, "Can I borrow it?" And I said, "Sure." He says, "Where is it?" I said, "It happens to be in the cabinet next to the refrigerator." About 10 minutes later, I get a text back. And he's like, Dad, it's not there. Which cabinet is it? And I tell him, I said, it's the cabinet right to the right of the refrigerator. Next thing I know, about a minute and a half later, I get a FaceTime call. So now I have my son on FaceTime, and he's like, Dad, I have been looking, and I do not see the phone holder. And I'm like, well, let me just make sure. You are standing in front of the refrigerator, yes? He said, yes. Great. Now, do you see the cabinet just to the right of the refrigerator? Yes. I said, it's the one where you open the door and it swings to the left. Yes. Wonderful. Right there on the bottom shelf directly in front of you is the phone holder. He goes, it's not there. And then I sit there and I said, can you flip your camera over so that it shows me the cabinet from the front or the rear facing camera on your phone? Sure enough, he does. And it's right there. I said, Matthew, it's right there. He goes, it's not. I said, I see it. He says, it's not there. I said, you don't see the black plastic phone holder right in front of you. And he's like, oh. And as soon as I said that, he instantly saw it. You see, the thing is that Matthew wasn't looking for the phone holder. He was actually convinced in his mind what he was looking for was the cardboard box, the original packaging that I had always kept that device in. And as soon as I told him it's not in the box, the actual phone holder, the plastic device, the black. Now, granted, the black kind of blended in with the darkness inside of the cabinet, and you could just barely see it. But if you were not looking for a box, but instead looking for the device that's not in a box, you would have seen it. And that is the point of the story. I'll get back to that in a moment. What I want to do in this episode is I want to share with you a fictionalized version of a coaching pattern that I've seen so many times. And what I've done is I've fed certain details of coaching conversations with several clients, and I have developed a fictionalized version of this story so that the business, the industry, the location, and any identifying details have all been changed. And because of that, I'm only going to read to you what ChatGPT gave me as the outline of the story because I want it to be as clean, to the point as possible. And I think the way that I read this to myself before hitting record on this podcast, this is the clearest outline of what happened. And it's happened multiple times in multiple conversations that I've had with clients. So here's that story now. I want you to imagine a founder of a company named Claire. Claire owns a specialty coffee shop. But it's not just any coffee shop. Over the years, Claire has built something so much more interesting than that. Her company imports exceptional coffee. She trains her baristas in her own methods. She creates tasting experiences, and she helps boutique hotels, restaurants, and private clubs design memorable coffee programs. She has a great reputation in her local market. She happens to be in a country that is a destination in the world. Her clients love her. Her standards are very high. And her team, though it is small, is very capable. And now Claire is ready for the next level. When she came to me in a coaching session and I said, hey, what is one thing that's not a part of your life that you would like to have as a part of your life moving forward? What is it that if a miracle could happen in this single conversation, what would you like the outcome to be? Claire said to me, "I think it's time for my company to go international." Naturally, when she says international, her mind immediately went to the United States. There are many reasons why she was led down that path. Certainly, the United States felt like the big market, more hotels, more restaurants, potentially more money, more opportunity, and even more scale. So she started building mental energy around the assumption that going international meant moving into the United States market. And the pattern I've seen over and over again is once that becomes the frame, all of the obstacles that she sees are shaped by that frame, by that perspective, by that particular picture of her future. Because of that, she automatically went into research mode. How would I get into high-end hotels in the United States? How would I compete with established brands? How would I find the right buyers? How would I get attention in such a crowded market? How can I maintain quality from so far away? And the biggest obstacle in her mind was, how would I deliver the experience? You see, Claire's company is not just selling bags of coffee. Her magic is in that experience. It's the specialized training. It is the tasting. It is the education. It is the way that her team walks into a hotel or a restaurant and helps the staff understand the story behind the coffee, the preparation method, the service ritual, and the feeling that they want the guest to have. And that is a part that simply can't be shipped in a box on a container ship to the United States. And Claire says to me, the thing I keep getting stuck on, I know that I can ship coffee anywhere, but I can't send the standard. I can't just trust that somebody will deliver the way that I see them delivering. I can't just send somebody who knows how I think, how I teach, how I speak to clients, and how I want the brand represented. That was the presenting problem. She wanted international expansion. She assumed that the United States was the obvious first market, and the United States would require trusted local representation. And the bold statement she said 2 or 3 different times in different ways is that trusted local representation feels so difficult to create. And so therefore, the idea of her international expansion felt heavy. Now, the interesting thing was I immediately got curious. It seemed to me from an outside point of view that she's already created this experience in her local market, in the country that she's in. She's had such amazing success. And I asked her to tell me how large her team was. How long had they been working with her? And just to give me some more details, because the place I was going to go is I was going to help walk her through and help her remember the days before she hired her first team member, and to help her reconnect to the idea that it was once difficult to find the right representation for her in her home country, and to train and educate them, and that this is something that she's already conquered once, and that it may not be as difficult as she's making it out to be. That's the place that I was looking to explore with curiosity. I wasn't sure that where it would exactly lead, but I had this intuition that this was the direction to go. And ironically, in that moment, she tells me about a woman on her team named Elise. She had told me that Elise had been with her for many years. and that she wasn't just an employee. She was somebody who fully understood the soul of the company. She knew the training style inside and out, the quality standards. She knew how to speak with hospitality clients. She understood the kind of subtle details that Claire truly cares about. But the issue that she brought up next was the fact that Elise was leaving, only bringing more challenge in her mind about the idea and prospect of finding other people in the U.S. market. You see, Elise, she tells me, found love with a man from another country, and she decided to move there. When I asked her where Elise was moving, she told me Amsterdam. She said that Elise did not have a job lined up there yet and didn't know exactly what her income would look like. This is something that came out of our dialogue down this path that we were in conversation. Claire simply knew that Elise cared deeply about this relationship. It mattered to her, and she knew that this was going to be the next chapter of her life. And in Claire's mind, this was filed under loss. I'm losing Elise. And that is the label on the box. Loss, disruption, staffing problem, one more thing to manage. But I asked Claire a question. Have you ever considered Amsterdam as your first international market? There are no words to describe what was happening on her face, but I could just tell that she was taking it in. It's like blinders had fallen off. And then I said, you told me that the biggest obstacle to international expansion is the idea of having somebody on the ground who understands your standards, your stories, your way of training, your brand, and the kind of client experience that you want to create, right? She said, yes. I said, you also told me that one of the only people in the world, one of 3 people in your world who understands the way your business shows up in the world is getting ready to move to Amsterdam. Is that correct? Yes. And she's moving there without a clear income plan. Yes? Yeah. So what if Elise moving to Amsterdam is not a loss, but a bridge to allowing you to experience your first international market expansion? In that moment, Claire was able to see the path that leads to her international market expansion goals inside the cabinet, but not in the box that she thought it was going to be in. You see, as a coach, I didn't show up and add anything new to Claire's life. There's no new person that appeared. There's no new market that appeared. There's no new resource that appeared. All of the facts were the same. Claire wanted to expand internationally. Elise understood the company. Elise was trusted. Elise knew how to deliver the experience. Elise was moving internationally. And Elise also needed meaningful work. Amsterdam had boutique hotels, restaurants, private clubs, international travelers, and a strong hospitality culture. Not only that, Claire even told me she already had a few supplier relationships in Europe. She told me that the time zone was easier and that there was less of a cultural difference between her home country and Amsterdam. Also, the first experience could be more relational instead of this massive expansion into this unknown everything. But Claire could not see all of those details because she was looking for the solution. She was looking for the answer inside a different box. She was only looking for a U.S. market entry strategy. So this trusted team member moving to Amsterdam did not look like the answer. It looked like a problem. It looked like the opposite of the answer. It looked like losing capacity in my local market. But from another frame, from a different perspective, it was possible that the very thing that she was grieving locally was also the lowest friction doorway into the outcome she most desired. So the question changed. Before, the question was, how do I build trusted reputation from scratch in the United States? That's how this conversation started. But as we got about 15 minutes into the conversation, the question becomes, where do I already have trust, skill, relationship, timing, and a person I trust on the ground? That is a very different question. And a different question revealed to Claire a completely different world, a completely different possible future, and one that still answered her desire of international expansion. Now, does that mean that Amsterdam is automatically going to be the answer? No. There's still questions about, demand. There's the question of, would Elise even be interested? There's the question about, if she's no longer employed as an employee legally here, how does she get compensated? Is that a contract role? Does she even want that role? What would the first test look like? There's all sorts of questions that still are unanswered. The difference is these questions are useful questions. They're no longer abstract questions floating around in some vague fantasy of some international U.S. market expansion. They're questions that are deeply connected to a real person, a real place, with real trust, and most importantly now, with a real next step. Have a conversation with Elise. This is how momentum begins. It's not a research into the market of Amsterdam. It's not finding out every piece in the puzzle before you take action. No, it's one question. Elise, are you interested in this opportunity? I know you're moving to Amsterdam and you're doing this for love. And I know you don't yet know what work is going to look like when you get there. And I also know that you understand this company more than almost anyone else. Would you be open to exploring whether Amsterdam could become our first international experiment? The fun part was a question that Claire asked me when I first introduced this concept. She said, "Why didn't I think of this? It is so ridiculously obvious." And I told her, I said, I can answer that quite clearly. It wasn't obvious because it's not what you were looking for. I shared with her that the frame that she had given herself, the task that she had given her subconscious mind to support her with is, I want to pursue an international expansion of my business into the U.S. market. And that's what her brain was looking out for. And then I began to talk about the fact that our brains are hardwired to take in this massive amount of information. And by default, it has to delete, distort, or generalize away any information that is not relevant to the things that her subconscious mind knows is important. And so that's why this little side detail was, oh my gosh, this just adds to the overwhelm of the idea of finding somebody and training them and putting them in place in an international market when I've got 3 team members that I've poured so much into and one of them's leaving. On top of all of that, it was the whole time Elise was the phone holder sitting there right in the cabinet on the bottom shelf, right in front of her. But instead, when she opened up that cabinet door, she was looking for the U.S. market. And so I said, this happens to us all. And I told her about my son and the phone holder story. And then she says, you know what? People can become so busy with everything surrounding them that they can't see what's directly in front of them. Now, the reason why I wanted to anonymize this story and share it with you, and the business principle here is the fact is that sometimes the solution that you are looking for won't be found using the frame or the lens that you are using to search for it. The filters that you have in place, there's a certain level of experience and knowledge and wisdom that you've picked up along the way where assumptions are made that the answer or solution to what your desired outcome is looks like this. When there is an infinite number of other lenses, filters, or frames or perceptions that you could have access to. And this is why coaching is so valuable, to help you see the things you can't see yourself. It's not that you are inferior or flawed by any stretch of the imagination. I told Claire that I had the same limitations as every other person. We are all limited by our own model of the world, by our own perceptions, our own assumptions, our own ways of thinking, patterns of behavior, all of this stuff. We are all limited by our own lens, frame, perspective, perceptions. And sometimes you just need somebody who's not limited by that perspective to help you see something from a different angle. The important thing here is that insight I've learned through this process is simply not enough. That breakthrough was powerful. But if it ended there, wow, I never even thought about that. It would have just been another interesting conversation. And for a lot of high performers, I've seen people who collect information, who collect insights, who chase after the dopamine of a breakthrough, another exciting possibility. And then they go on with their daily tasks and routines that call for their attention. But I've learned that over time that momentum actually begins when you take that insight and that clarity and you translate it into a committed, calendared action with protected focus. I have been working with a brand new group of people. I just launched the latest iteration of my work in the world. It is called Next Level Mastermind Momentum. It is taking the last 20 years of all of my experience, thousands of hours of coaching, thousands of hours of mastermind group facilitation, and pulling everything together in what I call the momentum method, a framework and a format for a mastermind group that is unlike any other mastermind group I've ever participated in, and unlike any other mastermind group that I have ever facilitated before. And just this past week, we had our first meeting, and it is amazing. If you are at all interested in how you can take and have a group experience where you can get into a hot seat, bring your desired outcome, share with us what is the obstacle that stands in your way, have a conversation. Sometimes it's just 2 or 3 questions away from that big breakthrough, helping you see something that's right there in front of you that you did not see before that question was asked. All you need is to shift the way you're seeing things. Get into a group of people who can help you see other things you are not seeing. And then once that clarity comes, being inside of the next level mastermind momentum, that's not enough. It is a group of people who are committed to taking that insight, that clarity, that next aligned step that you now know you need to go do, and translating that into what we call a committed calendar activity that you will put on a block of time on your calendar, and you will protect the focused attention that you have during that block of time and do that action. And not only that, but you make a commitment to a specific date where you will report back the results, the feedback that you got from that action. If this sounds interesting to you, if you would like more clarity on your next aligned steps to get to your desired outcomes, and you'd like to be in a group where people are routinely coming to that level of clarity, but taking it a step further, turning it into calendared, committed action, protecting those blocks of time, your focus, your attention, and then reporting back the results that you got. If this is something you feel like, that seems to be the missing ingredient to what I've got going on in my entrepreneurial journey, I want to invite you to check out Next Level Mastermind Momentum. You can check out the details over at cliffravenscraft.com/momentum. My friend, this is exactly why I do the work that I do today. I love helping people see things that they are not yet able to see on their own, and turn that insight into action, and turn that action into tangible results consistently over time, building momentum and leading to the experience of the life and business you desire. I have a practical exercise for you if you're interested in some homework. It's something that could be helpful. I would invite you to journal the answer to 6 questions. I'm going to put them in the show notes, but here are the 6 questions. You could just copy and paste them into your digital journaling of choice, or you can transcribe them from the show notes directly into your written journal. Here's question number 1. What disruption, loss, obstacle, or inconvenience am I currently facing? Question number 2. What am I assuming this means? Question number 3. What desired outcome am I pursuing right now? Question number 4. Is it possible that this disruption contains an asset or a relationship or some sort of bridge that I have not yet recognized? Question number 5. How might I choose to respond to this situation in a way that serves me? And then question number 6. What is the one next aligned action that I know I could take within the next 24 hours that might test this possibility? Then, after you've done that, take that action and find a block of time on your calendar, give it an appropriate number of hours. And then when that time comes up on your calendar, you protect that time like a warrior. You protect your focus, your attention. Tell everybody else, I am not to be disturbed during this block of time. I imagine a lot of insight that has occurred to you during this conversation, but I hope certainly one thing you will take away is this. The solution that you're looking for right now might not be in the same brown box that you've been looking for anymore. In fact, the solution may be staring you straight in the face, but you simply will not be able to see it until someone gives you an idea that it might be different than what you're currently looking for. If this episode has stirred anything in you, I'd love to hear from you. I create this content sitting here in my office, wondering who's out there, who's listening, whose life is being impacted by this content. And if this one resonated with you, I'd love for you to email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. In this email, I want you to tell me, what is the desired outcome that you are currently working toward? What currently feels like an obstacle or a disruption or a loss that seems to be standing in your way? I want you to know I read every email that comes in, and we might just begin a conversation there. And of course, like I said, if you're an entrepreneur who wants a room where insights routinely, consistently become committed, calendared action with protected focus, where you can also report back the results that you got, the feedback that you got, and discuss that so you can discern your next aligned action. You can learn more about Momentum Mastermind over at cliffravenscraft.com/momentum. Until next time, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level.
Mindset Answer Man.